So, good evening. I hope you're all well and you survived Christmas and everything. And let me just start something here. Okay, so let's start with some refuge and bodhichitta maybe. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the merit of practicing generosity and so forth, may I accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the merit of practicing generosity and so forth, may I accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the merit of practicing generosity and so forth, may I accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss. May sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and hatred. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and hatred. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and hatred. Yeah, welcome again. It feels like a long time that we had the last session, but I remember some topics we discussed, which was about how purification could make us sick. That was really good. Okay, so today we will, of course, continue with Shantideva's Bodhisattva and which is basically the practice of these four immeasurables that we have just recited. You know, these four, where are they again? Gone. Still gone, right? So these four are, of course, love. You know, we wish happiness and the causes of happiness for everyone. Especially the causes, they are important because according to Shantideva, the tragedy is that people want happiness but don't know its causes. Same goes with suffering. People want to be free from suffering, but they don't know the causes of suffering. So therefore, they're continuously accumulating them. So here in this aspiration bodhicitta, we pray that they're really free from suffering and its causes. And then, yeah, once that is achieved, and if beings achieve a sorrowless bliss kind of state, then, yeah, we rejoice in that, and yeah, we pray that they may abide in that state and never be separated from it. And all this actually, according to Longchenpa, we start with the last one first, equanimity. All this is based on equanimity, where we as practitioners don't have any bias. You know, we don't have any attachment to friends, family, and we also don't have any attachment or hatred to friends and family, and of course not to enemies. And we don't have ignorance, like carelessness towards strangers. But we are equally benevolent with everyone. So therefore, we could use, if we have a good relationship with someone, we could use that relationship as a good example. We are not saying that with equanimity we treat everybody equally bad, but we equally good. So that is our aspiration, bodhichitta, and then Shantideva is talking about the 6 paramitas basically in the Bodhicharavatara, which is our application bodhichitta. And we are already, or maybe still, in chapter 6, which is on patience. So therefore the main culprit here is hatred, aversion, irritation, anger, those kind of things. And after having introduced the side effects of anger or hatred and those things, Shantideva is praising and introducing us into the opposite of it, which is patience. And and here we are in the section where we talk about how important it is to accept suffering. And this we have nearly finished. It is from verse 12 to 21. And I think today we start with verse 20. So here accepting suffering is important. Thanks to the simple logic. If we don't accept suffering, then we will suffer even more. The suffering will look even worse, or will look even more unsolvable. That is the beauty of our aversion. It makes the whole thing worse. So therefore, we should not have aversion to suffering, but we should be open and accommodating. And maybe we can be even open to learn from it. And then in a second step, we then try to get rid of the causes of suffering, of course. We don't want to dwell in suffering. But as Buddha said in the first noble truth, it's important to know the suffering. But then the second noble truth is to abandon the causes of suffering. And according to this chapter and according to the whole Buddhism, aversion, anger, hatred is definitely a cause for suffering. Hence, we are encouraged to abandon that. And therefore, in Mahayana, we have this paramita of patience, which is the exact opposite of anger and aversion. Of course, there are like many other methods in Mahayana also, like emptiness or understanding of emptiness. So in other words, wisdom or compassion. And yes, of course, they work also. But here the specific antidote to anger is patience. Okay, now we are, and today will be a little bit difficult, I'm afraid. At some point we will go through 4 verses that deal with the Samkhya view, and that is, that's always a challenge for me at least. But so far so good. We are at verse 20, and there Shantideva is using, as sometimes in the text, the example or the analogy of a battlefield and warriors. And so hatred being the enemy, and patience being the victorious soldier. Or we are, as a bodhisattva, we are the soldiers or warriors who overcome these enemies. And this is here, verse 20. So The victorious because one is conquering the enemies, in our case, hatred. So the victorious warriors are those who, having disregarded all suffering, vanquish the foes of hatred and so forth. Common warriors slay only corpses. Yeah, as usual, or not as usual, but as often in the text, Shantideva is using that example, of fighting and enemy and battlefield and being victorious. Again, that is always an internal fight. It's never fighting against anyone out there. And secondly, he also has the style very often that he's given an example and then also relating it, of course, to the topic. And here, when we talk about the victorious warriors, so let's say these are the bodhisattvas who are courageous, who are strong, and they are happy to accept suffering. That's the second line here. Happy to accept hardships and not getting overwhelmed by suffering on the way, or by hardships or diseases, or by people who are maybe disheartening or disappointing. So the bodhisattvas have the courage and commitment to travel on the bodhisattva path to then reach Buddhahood. And then by that third line, they crush the kleshas like hatred and so forth. So that refers, of course, to all kleshas. But again, in our chapter 6, hatred is the main klesha. But for our practice, we should follow Jamgonto Lototai's advice that we should detect our personal main klesha and then work on that first. That is so important, because if we have our favorite klesha and that is constantly active in our mind, then nothing will really happen. Nothing will really work. I mean, no transformation. But here, we are crushing down these kleshas, and we apply the antidote of patience here, and by that we win the war against hatred. So that is why bodhisattvas are like real fighters or real heroes. That are these first 3 lines. But then, in contrast, but we could add here, common warriors, they only slay corpses. That means if my neighbor is, I don't know, is annoyed with me, and then he or she is killing me, then she would or he would not be a true hero, like in the bodhisattva kind of sense, because his enemy, would be, I'm impermanent anyway, I will die anyway. So it's not like such a big thing that he or she, my neighbor, has accomplished, I'm mortal, my life is totally fragile, my body is ready to disintegrate any day anyway, even without her or his help, in quote unquote. That's why he is saying they are not really like true heroes. So if we kill an outer enemy, that is the main point here. If you kill an outer enemy, that is not really heroic, because that outer enemy is going to die anyway. Or maybe even the outer enemy will turn into a friend at some point. So therefore, that is not a big achievement, because you just would have to wait, and then like after a few years, maybe this person dies already. So no need to kill him or her. And then in some commentaries, there's also some what is it? Some advice, to or to some booster, so that we have confidence that we can do so, that we can really fight with the kleshas and win over them, and then attain Buddhahood. And there are a couple of reasons. I mean, the main cause is we have the Buddha nature, that is the main cause. And the Buddha nature is by nature full of qualities, but free of kleshas. So since that is our true nature, that's why everything else that is not the true nature, like the kleshas, are removable. So that is the main cause, of course. And then secondly, the kleshas are confused, and they're based on confusion or misperception, misunderstanding, not knowing reality, distorted. The kleshas are based on a distorted view. But the antidotes like patience or compassion or wisdom, they are not distorted, they are not confused. And the third example, or the third, I don't know, what is it? Statement for inspiration was that, since the problem and the solution, they cannot stay at the same moment in time in one's mind. So I cannot be in one moment be angry with somebody and in the same moment be compassionate or patient with that same someone. So therefore, by strengthening the antidote, the remedy, like patience, then in each moment I have that antidote, the patience, then as many moments I don't have any anger. So in other words, kleshas can be reduced and will be reduced by practicing the antidote. So these are like the 3 points that I mentioned in the commentaries. They're not really in the text. But the first thing was we have the Buddha nature, and second is kleshas are confused, but antidotes are not confused. And the third point is, we can cultivate the antidotes and by that reduce the kleshas. So that was verse 20. Is that acceptable? If not, please revolt. I don't want to go forward because then Samkhya is coming soon. But we have to go through it. Recently, I had to do it in German, and it didn't work out at all because I'm so used to the English text. So therefore, I think it will be better today. But the German was really, German language in itself is sometimes so complicated. And and my thoughts were really not applicable basically to the words that the German translation provided. I was really lost. Anyway, here, 21. Furthermore, suffering has good qualities. Through being disheartened with it, arrogance is dispelled. Compassion arises for those in samsara, cyclic existence. Evil is shunned and joy is found in virtue. So this is, I like that one. So here we are talking about more benefits or advantages when we are suffering. And so that is sort of the title. Furthermore, suffering has good qualities. And then, so the first quality of suffering is that we become sad or depressed in a good way. Or I'm quoting Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche here. I'm sure he doesn't mean clinical depression, but Yeah, also Dotoko was recently struggling with that word because he likes the word depression, but and I think it really, and he also thinks it's really it shows exactly the meaning, but usually in the Western context, it's used in a big sense, like really having a depression, like maybe being suicidal or something. So here, let's say then, let's use disheartenment, sadness, or Trungpa Rinpoche said, this genuine heart of sadness that is generated if we see suffering, if we feel suffering. That is basically renunciation. And then, and sort of that sadness, I think that doesn't go together with arrogance. This disappointment that makes you sort of come down back to earth, and you're not floating up there, lonely at the top somewhere and not needing anyone, not needing anything. Yeah, feeling undefeated and yeah, no need for people, no need to love or somebody, or no need to be compassionate or connected to somebody. You have the feeling you are like invincible somewhere, and that is of course a big problem, because it disconnects us from others. It makes us neglect others or disparage others. So that is sort of the problem in regards to sentient beings, and also in regards to enlightened beings, teachers, Buddhas, Bodhisattva. Arrogance is also a big problem because it makes us closed. We are not this open vessel anymore where the teacher can fill in the tea or nectar of the teaching. So therefore, arrogance is a problem. Pride, haughtiness. So that is dispelled. So that's another good benefit or advantage of suffering. And that, of course, as usual, these two together, maybe that is only a Western thinking, but maybe some people, they are too disheartened already, or too I mean, they don't feel arrogant, but the opposite, they feel so low and they have like inferior complex and so on, Then, of course, that they don't need these advantages of suffering. They should meditate on the advantages of having the Buddha nature, then the qualities, the activities or achievements that are possible. But this is but how it is expressed here is that suffering is a good antidote against too much self-importance. And then as a next step, because we are disheartened with samsara, then at the same time, because we are already in chapter 6 and we have practiced the 4 measurables, then we are like at the same time when we are disheartened with samsara, we also, since we are connected with other sentient beings, and we are even more connected when our arrogance is dispelled, then we feel compassion with others who are in samsara and who are suffering there. Yeah, because sadness is also, I don't know, it softens the mind sort of, and it also makes a little bit more space in the mind. So some empathy can even grow, and maybe we start with our loved ones, but then we can extend it. We should extend it, of course. yeah, and then the more we have this compassion and empathy, then in the Gelug tradition, then we have these 7 steps of cause and effect that then leads to bodhicitta. So this compassion, at one point, if we practice the four immeasurables, then that leads to bodhicitta. So that is a great advantage of suffering. And then, remember what we had in the 4 immeasurables. And then, of course, we want to make sure that then the other people have happiness and its causes, and have freedom of suffering, and have the freedom of the causes of suffering. So in other words, this compassion in bodhicitta will then lead us to have more understanding of karma, better respect or in karma, and then we act accordingly, and we also inspire others to act accordingly. So therefore, that is the last line here. Therefore, negative actions are abandoned, and joyfully, that is, what is it? That is like the paramita number 4, but I don't think in Tibetan it is, I just check here. It's not in Tibetan, it's not that word, but anyway, joyfully we do positive things. As I said, this comes because we have an understanding of karma. Therefore, we know that negative deeds will lead to suffering in this and future lives, and positive deeds will lead to happiness in this and future lives. So, and the idea here, according to the commentaries, is if we are more aware of these good qualities of suffering, then it will make us more receptive. No, then we will be more able to accept suffering, and then we will not have aversion to it, which again would make it bigger. And that would end this section here on that. Oh, now I see there are some messages. Sorry, I didn't look at the chat so far. Yeah, so this ends like, this was like verse 12 to 21, where it is about accepting suffering. And as that's the first big step to not try to run away from it or create an extra suffering that comes from trying to fight it, but that we learn to accept this, know the suffering, accept the suffering, and then and then finally we can then abandon its causes. Wait, I just have to check something. I want to find this 7 points of cause and effect. If I can't find it, I can try to remember. It is basically that we start with remembering that all sentient beings have been our kind mothers in the past lives. And we have beginningless lifetimes, and therefore we have beginningless, or we have limitless numbers of mothers. And then, no, I can't find it. And then, strange, but I found it somewhere else. And then the more we have that feeling that the mothers were so kind, and then and helped us and protected us and nourished us and educated us. So that we are basically talking about all sentient beings. Yeah. Then we want to repay that kindness. That is, I think, the next step. And then, we generate more and more compassion and love towards them, and that then leads to bodhicitta. I think I only mentioned like 5 now, so let me try to find it again. But that is like the idea. Starting with all beings having been our mother. Let me find it. I think I wrote it down. It's somewhere. And usually I only found it in the Gelug context. There it is taught a lot. Really strange. Let me ask Guru Google. Ah, yeah, here it is. Okay, first point is, wait, I just shared. This is Rigpa Wiki. So the first point is recognizing all beings as our past mothers. Yes, I think I covered that. Then remembering the kindness of all these beings, so everyone, all of you here in the Zoom and everybody in the remaining world. And then, yeah, we develop this gratitude. Yeah, I think I sort of implied it. So we are really like, yes, they protected us, they fed us, you know, they have been so kind to us, they taught us. And then, yeah, then the next one is love. We wish them to be happy. Yeah, of course, if you're very grateful for somebody, you know, they saved your life or they gave you life, of course you we want them to be happy. But then we also see their suffering, so therefore we develop compassion. And then yeah, here's responsibility, laksam. That is actually like yeah, then we have this, I forgot how Kanto Rinpoche was explaining it, like the excellent thought, you know, then we have just a benevolence, you know, like a here it said responsibility, but it's such a, yeah, laksam is really literally excellent thought. Maybe we can say beautiful mind. That is maybe not so bad. But I'm making it up here. So this benevolence in our heart, the good heart, and then comes bodhicitta. So the first 6 are the causes, as it's written here also, and the last one is the result, bodhicitta itself. Yeah, and as you see, you know, it is taught by Atisha. So, and she's of course in the Kadam tradition, in the old Kadampa tradition, and so yeah, hence the Gelugs, they are more into it. But as you can see here, Kanjo Rinpoche, which means it's in Jigme Lingpa's Treasury of Precious Qualities, has also taught on that. Okay, and then Arne is, that's, I don't have to read that. Is depression based on anger? Is depression based on anger? No, I think it can be based on many things. But how this section of the 6th chapter is introduced, there it is emphasizing that aversion or anger towards suffering yeah, exhausts you, you know, and makes you more depressed if you have that suffering. I mean, it's like that, you know, if you have aversion to something, and then if that something happens, then you are suffering, you know. Now I see Marina on the screen. If the same thing happens to her and she has maybe happiness, if she has a positive perception of the thing, then she will not suffer. She will be happy with it, you know. So likewise here, the more I have aversion to something, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It is just a subjective perception of it, then yeah, the more I suffer when facing it and when having it and when not losing it, and then yeah, I can be more depressed. That is like a negative thing, you know. But here, when I just mentioned depression, so maybe Marina, you can tell me when you to which point you were referring it to. When I mentioned here verse 21, which I share again, then I was paraphrasing disheartenment with depression, which is renunciation, basically. So that is something good that comes out of it, and that's not necessarily coming from anger. But it's coming from seeing the truth, you know, that we see the truth of, yes, samsara is full of suffering. Or somebody, I think Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche once also said, his mother was so depressed when she was young, so super depressed. And he said people would nowadays would put her in a mental hospital. But she was so depressed because she was not allowed to practice Dharma or something, or have contact with the Dharma. It was like the first years only. And so that was a good depression, because she knew what would make sense in this chaotic life, but she wasn't able or allowed to do so. So that made her depressed. But it's based on seeing the truth, you know, because I think he added that she was so aware of the impermanence of everything, you know, and that is depressing in a good way. Yeah, so therefore, yeah, some people, maybe it's too simplified, you know, if you use that word depression in these different contexts. But some depressions come maybe from a klesha, from anger, frustration, and then another depression comes maybe even from seeing the truth and seeing how sad the situation is in the world or in samsara. So, anything else? Emilia, please unmute yourself. And
Arne, it's just I'm listening to your explanation, and it seems on the second line, it seemed quite a jump from being disheartened with suffering. I think the renunciation, understanding that everything outside is not going to bring happiness, but it's got to come from within. But then from there, also understanding the role that the ego has, and then the package of renunciation, then leading to not becoming arrogant, because one can start to have renunciation and still be quite arrogant. You know, the self-centered nature is still operating a lot there.
why? But first of all, I want to say yes. When I just now talked about it, I thought actually one could talk like maybe 2 or 3 hours on that verse, because there's so many different steps in between are not mentioned.
Yeah, I think you went straight to the end point.
Yes.
Because arrogance is a manifestation, is ego's manifestation, to be arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
And then for that to disappear is to understand that ego, samsara is all about ego, but just being fed up with suffering, for me, is like there are lots of things in between until getting to the end point of really letting go of arrogance, genuine understanding of what that means. Anyway, just comment.
Oh, yeah.
And,
No, it's good. Maybe you are seeing it bigger or more perfect than it is meant here. It is just like if for example, if I have a lot of pain, that already humbles me, you know. That doesn't last long because the pain doesn't last long, you know. But in that moment, let's say like 2 days, I'm getting more humble, actually, you know, more soft and more like workable and more friendly. And, you know, in that kind of situation, you know, if we have suffering, yeah, but you're right. If you want to, when you are talking on a bigger scale, you know, that we really understand self-importance is the problem. Yeah, that is yeah, much bigger than, and therefore we become less arrogant. That is a much higher league than my humbleness when I have pain, you know. And then, yes, I agree. Then a lot of more explanation and maybe time in between has happened. Well, what do you think?
Well, I think Shantideva was just putting the whole these, and this will be the end point without further elaborations there. And then perhaps on the commentaries, people go a bit deeper into that. Because suffering, just talking about suffering, disheartened by suffering, I mean, what suffering, you know, is he mentioning what? Pervasive suffering? That's, you know, that would be the, at least intellectually speaking, I think that would be the big one to trigger renunciation. Because suffering, depending on what one has, you go and see a doctor, blah, 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 and it's over. You know, like the pervasive, really, wow, that's it. And then triggering you use the word humble, to be humble by, wow, what is this other me is thinking about? And thinking that, you know, that's its view of happiness, but it's not. And then really through renunciation, and then there would be no space to be arrogant, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the commentaries, it's more like, yeah, on a smaller scale, you know, how it's explained, like a small suffering, you know, somebody is my neighbor is noisy, you know, those kind of smaller difficulties we have in life. But then if you read Shantideva, it says arrogance is dispelled. I mean, that is a big sentence. I mean, if that is the truth, then one is actually a Buddha, right? And yeah, I'm not sure about the Tibetan word here with dispelled. Of course, I don't find it. Yeah, but that would be a definitely big. Maybe it is only like a momentary dispelling kind of thing. What is happening? No, but I agree. If one wants to look at it in a bigger scale, then yes, there's a lot more to say. Yeah, and it really takes time and a lot of cultivation, meditation to go through that contemplation, that and understanding that selfishness is the root problem, and then to yeah, loosen that up. But really, the commentaries are much softer on that, and Yeah, I don't know. I will have to look into them, but I don't know which verb they used. If they say dispelled also, or if you just reduced, you know. Yeah, I can check.
It may be reduced, but what do I know? It's Shantideva anyway. You know, I'm here, blah 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 blah. It's like, come on, come on, Emilia, get real.
Yeah, but it's always good to go back to the root, like Shantideva in this case. Yeah, maybe clarified. Yeah, clarified. Maybe selva. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And now we come to verse 22. And here a new chapter, or section sort of starts from verse 22 to 33. And there are very different titles or headings for that section. And they refer that we either see the ultimate reality of things and therefore we are patient, or we have awareness of the Dharma, maybe that refers to the ultimate reality, and therefore we have patience. Yeah, or we are realizing the Dharma in a definite way, and therefore we have patience. So that kind of things are used as the heading for the next verses, as I said, 22 to 33. And the idea, the main things is to understand that there is nothing out there that is out of itself wanting to create suffering to us. There's no independent entity like the enemy, for example, you know, the neighbor. There's not somebody in control out there who has a premeditation and therefore wanting to inflict harm to us. But so that is refuted. That is one part, and the other part is then interdependence is introduced. So instead of there being a single entity that wants to harm us, there are many causes and conditions that come together, and that then create the anger in the other person, and therefore the other person is harming us. And then when we understand that everything is interdependent, then it's a very easy next step to see that everything is like an illusion, that nothing is really like it seems, nor is it otherwise, but it's appearing because of causes and conditions. And so if we understand that there's no creator of somebody who has the bad intention to really harm us, but if the enemy is only acting like that because of many causes and conditions, and therefore everything is just an illusion, me who's maybe getting angry or harmed, then the harm that is done by the enemy and the anger of the enemy, if I understand that everything is like in a dream, then that is the idea of the next verses, then we are maybe more able to be patient. And then, so the first distinction is made here between harm that I experience or suffering, and then the distinction is made if that suffering is because of somebody or if it's just because of something. And so we might think, it's if I'm sick, for example, you know, if I suffer because of some things, of some situations, then I can tolerate that. But if somebody if there's a person who is really creating suffering, is the cause for my suffering, then I don't want to tolerate it, but it's very normal to hate that person. That is how we maybe usually think. And to that, Shantideva is saying 22. As I don't become angry with great sources of suffering, such as jaundice, then why be angry with animate creatures? They too are provoked by conditions. So if we look at the first two lines, so if we pick any sickness, then from Tibetan medicine point of view, it is just the result of this three basic pathogenic factors coming together. Fire, wind, and Flecken, or bile, wind, and Flecken. So if one of them is too strong, or two of them, or three of them, and in combination so they are sort of in combination, and then depending on which organ is karmically receptive to these factors, then a disease happens. So in other words, there are many causes and conditions coming together before a disease such as jaundice here comes together. Jaundice, I think, from Tibetan medicine is like, bile, like fire and Flecken in liver and gallbladder area. It could also be tinnitus is also the same, like from Tibetan medicine point of view. So that is, as I do not become angry when these causes and conditions come together and produce an illness. So that is are the first two lines. Then why I'm angry with my neighbor or my enemy? Why is it different if he or she harms me? Why is it different than if those factors harm me? For example, if I have maybe stomach ache because of these factors coming together, I might not be angry with these pathogenic factors, but if I have stomach ache because my neighbor was kicking me in the stomach, then I might. I'm angry at that neighbor or enemy, so-called enemy. So it's actually the same stomach pain, but the one that is, is sort of arising because of inanimate reasons, then it's much easier for me to be patient with that suffering. But if it's arising because somebody is kicking me or beating me, then I justify it to be angry even and hateful. I don't know. Maybe nobody is really angry with COVID, right? Because we don't think there's an intention behind. Of course, if you start thinking, yes, the Americans, they produced it in their laboratory, then we start getting angry with the Americans, definitely. And then they were smuggling it to China and so on, Yeah, that is exactly the point here. So if once we think there is an animate person behind all that, then we become angry. But if we just think it's a virus, normally we don't think a virus has that much consciousness and intention, to harm us. So that is the main point, and because we think the intention makes somebody an enemy. Yeah, it's also, I think it's similar. If for example, my same neighbor is unintentionally kicking me in the stomach, I would not be angry, I would just think, oh, she's mindless again, and la la la. And she was stumbling over whatever, the trash that I didn't remove, so it's like, it's then if I don't see any bad intention in her, but it was an accident, that is much more easy to accept. But if I see a bad intention, then I think, yes, I need to get angry. And then Shantideva is saying this sentence here, which is important. They too are provoked by conditions. So like our sickness is coming from different causes and conditions, very small ones. Of course, there are many others. I mean, how these three basic pathogenic factors come, there are, of course, many other factors behind, like, I don't know, food and behavior and emotions and all of that, and spirits, they would say. So anyway, so a physical disease comes from because of many causes and conditions that are coming together. And Shantideva is saying the same is true with my neighbor or my enemy, who's an animated person, right? And she or he also doesn't have any control and no intention, but he or she is under the control of many mental causes and conditions that made her angry and then made her kick my stomach. So Shantideva's idea is the enemy has no control either, but the enemy is controlled by his or her anger. And of course, his or her anger comes from many other causes and conditions. Basically, of course, from ignorance, that is the cause, but then there are many other conditions that trigger that ignorance or form that ignorance into anger at that particular moment. So that is here the main point. There's not one truly existent enemy that intentionally gives rise to a truly existent anger in order to inflict truly existent harm on me. But that anger in that person comes because of many causes and conditions, whatever. Insomnia, maybe this person is sick, maybe this person is afraid. Maybe that person is afraid or whatever. And then, of course, from Madhyamika point of view, that other person is also not one single thing, but also comes together, the body now, from many causes and conditions. And that I get hurt by that person, also I have many causes and conditions, like karmically speaking, of course, but then also that my stomach is so soft or vulnerable, and many other things, like if I bump my head on the wall, of course it's painful, but it's only half. The half of the responsibility is the wall for being hard, but half is also my head for being hard. Also, if it would be more soft, like my belly, then it would not hurt. Anyway, I hope you got the point. There are so many different factors always involved. And therefore, if we really want to be angry with something, we cannot single out the person. We cannot even single out the anger of the person, but we would have to be angry with all the causes and conditions that come into play. And that is, of course, not possible. And therefore, there's no need for us being angry. That is the logic here. That there is no independent anger or independent enemy trying to harm me. But yes, they are all dependent on so many causes and conditions. That is already the main message that is now discussed in the next difficult 4 verses. Did you get that main message? Is there anything to discuss on that? Okay. I pity. Oh, great, because then we don't have to go into this verses yet. Tell me, Marina.
Sorry.
No, it's good.
Can you, so I think this, it seems like there's layers here. I'm just trying to kind of dig a little bit, because I think when you said the word intention, that made sense to me a little bit. Like, if somebody is doing something by accident, at least for me, I'm like, okay, I don't get angry. If I assume or I'm thinking that there's an intention to harm me, then definitely the anger, or like the frustration, the irritation comes up. But there's also this point of control, almost like, I guess when you were talking about disease, I started thinking like there are instances where you would be angry at, like, if you come from a religious background, you would be angry at a god, right? Or the circumstances, even though they're not animate I guess a god can be animate, or like has a connotation of having control, somebody who has control over it and creates a situation that causes you to feel pain in some, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that is exactly what is coming. Because now, but I will not say it, but I just say sort of what is coming. So it's, yeah, the Samkhyas, they think, you can say God or whatever entity, they use substance that has an intention to harm. That is their point, exactly. And then it's more difficult, again, to be patient, because, right? Because God was punishing me. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So yes, exactly. So then that makes it almost like, and I guess you taking it to this point with other people as well, so then I guess the intention is always like, somebody has the intention to hurt, right?
Yes, and then it makes, yeah, and Shantideva's point is, if you assume there's an intention, that makes it more difficult for you to accept suffering.
Okay.
And it makes you more justifying, yes, I should be angry.
But if we're basically, so we're saying is that even if externally or relatively somebody comes up and says, kicks me in the stomach and literally tells me to my face, my intention was to hurt you, even with that, knowing that the causes and conditions is what created that intention to arise, and my own causes and conditions to hear that entity tell me or display the like to hurt me, are not, so they're not in control and I'm not fully in control.
Yes. But there are like multitudes of many factors that came together for that person to stand in front of you, and that person having that kind of mood and and the willingness to express it, and no resistance to kick you in the stomach. There are so many factors, yes, that the person has no control of, yes, or over. Yeah. That is the idea here of verse 22. Yeah. And therefore, there's no need to be angry with that person, because, yeah, she or he is helpless. It's just because causes and conditions came together, the result has to be there. That's the thing. No matter if you want it or not. If you, Cancer, which example is if you have the egg and the time and the heat, maybe that's already it, right? You only need these 3. Then if those come together in time like 6 minutes, the egg will be boiled. It doesn't matter if you want it or not. The causes and conditions came together.
Okay.
And likewise here, the enemy doesn't want to be enemy or doesn't want to harm you actually, but he or she is victim of the circumstance. Emilia.
When you were explaining the verses to us, you mentioned about cause and conditions operating under certain conditions, whatever, someone is going to be ill, and if they're not angry when they are ill, why are they angry if someone does something? But under the seeing everything on cause and conditions, I think for me, it came as these verses are talking about everything is cause and condition. So even my own anger in relation to people is also cause and condition. So
Yes.
if in one instance of cause and conditions I'm not feeling angry, it's to apply exactly the same to everything else, driven by cause and conditions, which is all of it. So not really to see as a kind of to see for what it is. It is due to cause and conditions. And then to, right, the disease I don't like, but I'm not angry at it. So if someone does or kicks me in the stomach, I'm not going to be angry either, because I'm also operating on cause and conditions, which are to some extent beyond one's control. So like applying the whole thing is basically drop it, don't get angry with anything.
Yes, exactly. Wait, there's also one nice verse coming later. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But yes, how you put it is really right. That is really his logic. There's so many different causes and conditions always coming together. It doesn't make sense to single out few of them, or one of them, and be angry with that. That is really simple logic here. Because for whatever reason, whatever factor or condition you single out, it is, as we know from the Madhyamika, it's not one single thing, it's also dependent on many others and other factors and so on. Yeah, so therefore you don't have a target anymore, where to shoot your anger at,
May I give an example for this typical problem? I'm very much occupied with Israel and Palestine. And in this context, there are parents who have lost, Israelis who have lost a child by the Palestinians, and the Palestinians have lost a child by the Israeli soldiers. And they put themselves together, and now they try to work and to understand one another, and they really put their suffering aside, and they just listen with patience. And whenever anger comes up, they listen, and they are very patient, and their love begins towards one another. So for me, that's a very, very important attitude of how to overcome suffering, how to by patience, which is going into love for one another. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think this patience, how you describe it, also it comes because, they're not jumping to reactions or conclusions.
Yeah, exactly. To hatred, for example.
But they're just, what is it, bearing witness, sort of, they're just giving space and time and just watch, and what is there, and then in that space, that then something more constructive can come, like love or compassion. Yeah, but if one is eagerly jumping to conclusion, yes, this is my enemy, then that is so, the space is lost, it is so focused on this is the bad guy, and therefore, yes, the reaction has to be hatred.
Right.
Which verse have just been lost? The 22 only, right? Or 23? 22. Yeah, well, there are some easy verses coming still. Right, 23 is now. Can somebody give me a sign? Yes, thank you, Emilia. Although they are not wished for, these sicknesses arise. Yeah, we don't want them, of course not. We don't want COVID, let's say, but it comes. But then, yeah, also COVID is a good example, I think, because it depends so much on us, you know. Also, if we get sick or not, you know, there are so many immunological things that are helpful or not helpful, you know, to fight against it. Anyway, but we can talk whatever illness, you know. So even though we don't want whatever illness, the illnesses, they come again because of many factors. In Tibetan medicine, we have these 3 building blocks, and yeah, and we just accept that, and therefore we are not getting angry with the illness. And yeah, likewise, and here it talks, from according to the commentaries, only always talks about the anger of the enemy, you know. So, and likewise, although the negative emotions, are not wished for by the enemy, so the enemy doesn't want to be angry with us, this anger, these disturbing conceptions, this anger forcibly arises in the enemy without the enemy having any control. It's very similar to the previous verse. So like the illness is not inherently existent, but it's dependent on many things. Likewise, the mental state of our enemy is also not inherently existent, but also very dependent. It's not autonomous, you know. But in both cases, I think Marina also said, you know, they don't have any choice, but they are the illness or the anger in the enemy arise because of many different causes and conditions. So therefore, definitely we don't have to be angry with that person. And then 24. Without thinking I shall be angry, people become angry with no resistance. And without thinking I shall produce myself, likewise anger itself is produced. So here is still, according to the commentaries, all of them, we are talking still about the enemy and what is happening in his or her mind. So the enemy is not thinking that, yes, today I want to be angry, you know, and want to be mad and mean. And the enemy is also not born like that, you know, to be angry all the time. That is the first line. And then second line, people become angry with no resistance. Yeah, that is the same, you know, people become angry with, yeah, they cannot resist to be angry, because anger suddenly comes when the causes and conditions come together. And yeah, could be really small things that could have triggered that. Many small things from now or the past, or worries about the future, and then this person is angry now and has no control to stop it. And also the anger now in the third line, and without thinking I shall produce myself, the anger is also not saying, yes, let's arise, let's be big, but it also comes from causes and conditions, And also these causes and conditions also don't have the wish or the intention to create the anger. They're just small things here and there, and that together then makes anger arise. But yeah, nevertheless, when these things all come together, likewise anger itself is produced, then the anger will manifest. Like in the example with the egg. Doesn't matter if we want the egg to be boiled or not. If the causes and conditions come together, then it's happening. Then the egg will be boiled. And another example, it's very nice in the commentaries to this verse, is also like a mirror. So, or you can look, at the screen, it's like a mirror also, The mirror has no intention to produce any reflections. But if the causes and conditions come together, like my face in front of it and enough light and the correct angle and the mirror not being dusty, then a reflection arises, because these causes come together. So the mirror didn't have that intention to produce an image of my face. And also the image of my face doesn't have any intention to be produced. Yeah. So these two together. So the mirror is the mind of the enemy. So the mind of the enemy didn't have the wish to create anything. and then but the causes and conditions come, and then the anger arises in the mind of the enemy. But so in other words, then the anger arises. In other words, the reflection arises in the mirror, but the anger or the reflection, they also didn't have any intention to arise. Yeah, therefore, again, there's no target to point our fingers at, here is the intention, and therefore it's justified to be angry. Okay. Okay, then 25. All mistakes that are and all the various kinds of evil arise through the force of conditions. They do not govern themselves. I'm really sorry that I was lamenting about the Samkhya view so much today. We will not even reach those verses. Next year. Jon, I will answer yours after that here. Oh, Jangshubs is even more Vajrayana. Yes, let's answer. Then let's talk about that after this one verse here. So 25. So all mistakes that are, so all kleshas, and all that various kinds of evil. So that refers to all the results of kleshas, which is suffering, negative actions, all the harm that is done through that. All that comes because many causes and conditions come together. And yeah, again, they don't have control. They don't govern themselves. They come together, and then without any choice, without any independence, without autonomy, they arise. And that is, again, that is totally unintentional. It's just happening, like it's snowing, that's it, because of many causes and conditions, or the water is flowing because it's going down, there's no need to be angry with the fact that it's snowing or water going down. But of course, maybe we are angry at the climate because we are angry with those who, with ignorance, create conditions that there is climate change. You know, of course, that is something else. But then again, we think, okay, there's a person who is ignorant, and therefore the climate is changing. But then I think we can still apply the same thing. This ignorance of that person is also not independent, but again, that has many different factors. Yeah. So therefore, yeah, maybe I liked this with the Israeli Pakistani, this example. Yeah. So Shantideva is, I think, suggesting us not to jump to conclusions, you know, and just be aware, mindful, give space, you know, don't easily lose the temper, don't try to be defensive, don't try to react at all, you know, but just keep your mind clear and undisturbed, and then you can be compassionate. And in that sense, and that also then helps, you know, the more compassionate we are, then of course the less anger is possible, and then the more focused our mind can abide. So that is even creating some kind of meditative state, you know, if we have this patience and compassion together, this space, this not judgmental, this freedom of judgmentalism, knowing that everything just arises because of causes and conditions, then yeah, there's no single thing to blame, and we can more easily accept it. Okay, this was 25. Then let's stop here. I just write it down that I don't forget. And then we have these two questions here. So Jon is saying, so anger is produced as an expression of the nature of mind. Yeah, I think there's nothing that can come with, yeah, from somewhere else. Yes. But it is more like, yeah, maybe it's just an expression of the nature of mind or some movement in the mind. But then this expression or movement is then, yeah, kidnapped or hijacked by our egoistic perception, you know, and then it appears as anger. But if we would not do that, it would just express itself as one of the 5 wisdoms. I forgot what is the wisdom that is the nature of anger. If somebody knows, then please let me know. Maybe wisdom of equality. I really forgot. Anyway, it doesn't matter so much. So,
but what I meant by it was that even though anger is not necessary for anything, because everything is by causes and conditions manifested, still the feeling primarily comes up when you feel you are kicked in your stomach, and before you even can realize that it's not necessary to get angry because of all these causes and conditions, and not of the intention of whatever. The sensation of the anger is there. That's what I mean. It's a primary sensation. That's what you still have, even though you realize fully that it's not necessary to have such emotion.
yes, for me, that is true, because I only intellectually understand that it's not necessary to have those emotions. Mm-hmm. But yes. I guess the bodhisattvas on the bhumis, they have realized that, and therefore maybe there's a movement in the mind. And I think normally in those teachings it is said, you know, like the manner of arising is the same. So there's some movement in the mind, but then they don't make a egoistic story out of that. So therefore it can the negativity can dissolve, and what remains is the wisdom. But yeah, just me intellectually now knowing that it's not necessary, I think it helps a little bit, but yeah, I have to practice to like be able to live it like that. And I have to be yeah, super mindful and aware, you know, because that in my case it comes so quickly, you know. I see my neighbor outside, you know, and then immediately I'm angry, you know. But I know when I'm stoned, you know, then I can see my mind much, like I can see many small steps in between before I get angry, you know. Of course, I'm not taking Mahayana as a meditation, but I did take it, and that is what I noticed, you know, that yes, there are many different steps that lead up to that anger. And yeah, meditation, I think, is a solution that has less side effects, and that can make us realize that, you know, all these different small steps in between, from a tiny irritation to the full-grown anger, and then we can interfere much earlier. And yeah, for a meditator, it doesn't look like anger is here in one moment, but there are like kalpas in between, you know. Yeah, from Jangchup, Kino, and Emilia. Yeah. I could have remembered the names of the wisdoms in regards to Jon's answer, but I doubt it was mirror-like wisdom. But it doesn't matter. I can look it up also. So the idea is like from these 5 root kleshas, they all actually are just appearances in the mind, movements in the mind. If our ego is distorting them, then they appear as the kleshas as we know them. And if we don't let our ego distort them, but manifest as it is, then they manifest as these 5 wisdoms. But the 5 wisdoms, yeah, they have, like, let's say, a specific quality, but they're not different things, you know. There is like one Buddha wisdom. And regarding Jangchup's thing, wrathful deities is manifestation of wisdom mind. Yes. Yes. And therefore our practice, by either identifying with them or getting their blessing and so on, helps us to connect with that wisdom mind in us. Yes. Okay, just because it just takes half a minute, I will just look it up here, which wisdom it is. I was just recently actually translating for Ringo Turku, who taught on that. He did go through the Kuntu Sangpo Möndam, the Dzogchen prayer by Buddha Batra. And of course, it is. This is a big topic in there. I really suggest everyone to receive teachings on that. This explains exactly that, you know, how the emotions came about, and then, yeah, from very subtle moment to big emotions, and then this even grows bigger into realms, you know, like hatred, if it's fully grown, it's hell realm, you know, that we experience. And I'm still looking. And then also he's saying, like Kuntu Sangpo is saying, yeah, but that is all not necessary, you know, because I'm the nature of all that is wisdom. Please recognize that, you know, I'm that, you know, I'm the Buddha is that. Please recognize me. Doesn't matter, I can't find it now. Debate, dualism, Preta, hell, we need to find pride. Here. Yeah, but then here it's different translations of this wisdom of radiant clarity, it says here. Yeah, I have to then connect it to the usual standard, what Rigpa Vicky is saying. Yeah. Yeah, Marina, that was like 8 days teaching just recently, but it's gone, and I think it's only available for participants. But just in future, it would be good to receive those teachings. But that is totally another level than here. And time is over. So yes. Yeah, I want to emphasize again, I quote Khyentse Rinpoche about drugs, you know. Drugs can be really good to see how that one can perceive things totally different, you know, and that is really possible. Time perception is different, space perception is different. All these things, you know, you perceive everything very different, but it's enough to do it once with drugs, you know, just to have that experience or taste if you need it, you know. But then, of course, the practice is then to, and that is much more stable than through meditation to cultivate those experiences and realizations. So therefore, yeah, once is fine, but that's it. That it's not a solution long-term speaking, but meditation is, because it doesn't have a side effect. And there are many things he also said, yeah, if you want to find solutions, you know, then yeah, it's always good to find a solution that doesn't create more problems. Because in this example, I could drink also alcohol, you know, and then I'm not angry, maybe. I'm more patient because I'm more, whatever, mellow or and forgiving, you know. So that works maybe against my anger, but it creates many other side effects like liver cirrhosis and many other health problems. And in the long term, it makes me also mentally, not clear and all of that. So therefore, that is not a solution either, you know. But this meditation or awareness, mindfulness, and by that noticing a small aversion arising, that is a solution. And therefore, yeah, and thanks to that, we can be patient. And also the understanding that Shantideva offered, like understanding that everything is interdependent and that there is no one single enemy, no one single negativity somewhere, but it just arises because of causes and conditions. That understanding is also a solution without side effects. Just wanted to mention that in the end. But if you didn't take any drugs yet, you can take once. But you don't have to either. And I never took drugs. I was always too, really, I worked in psychiatry, and then we had really many patients there who were in psychosis because they took drugs. And so that's really dangerous. They couldn't come out of that. So therefore, stick to the Dharma and meditation. And to the dedication, which we do now for the sake of all beings. We try to share whatever we have accumulated today. Again, based on the wish of bodhicitta, that they all may be happy and that they all have the causes of happiness and that they all may be free of suffering and free of the causes of suffering. Through this merit, may all beings attain the omniscient state of enlightenment and conquer the enemy of false and illusion. May they all be liberated from its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. May I be reborn again and again, and in all my lives may I carry the weight of Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings. And if I cannot bear that weight, at the very least, may I be born with the burden of thinking that the Buddha Dharma could reign. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your interactiveness. And yeah, have a nice, how do you call it, transition into the next year.
Ja, gute Rutsch.
Guten Rutsch, genau.
Yeah, you too.
So Happy New Year.
And stay healthy and all of that.
Yes, let's have a 2021 better
Yes.
in a way than 2020.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
now we have a vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hope people learn from whatever happened, you know. And yeah, like environmentally speaking, and climate and all of that. There's actually soon, in 2 weeks, I think, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is meeting Greta on Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh,
With some scientists also, so I'm looking forward to that.
He's getting used to Zoom. He's just doing Zoom
Yeah,
teachings all the time.
yeah,
I
he's
think
really active.
it's so cute.
Yeah,
He just embraced technology and like doing it quite often. It's really nice.
yeah, it's amazing. I'm also in another teaching with Khenchen Pema Sher Rinpoche. He's Enigma Kempo, the oldest one, I think. He's 80 something. And His Holiness is also like 85, right? Yeah. And I think when they grew up in Tibet, it was like medieval time for us, you know, like technology-wise, you know. This is amazing how those senior masters had this flexibility to do that whole evolution or in like one lifetime, you know, to internet and Zoom and mobile phone and everything.
yeah.
Okay, guys. What?
Okay.
Just adjusted. He
Yeah,
just
exactly.
adjusted totally, because I've seen teachers, quite young teachers, like having some difficulty of looking at the screen.
Yeah. But if you ask Khenchen Rinpoche what is the sign of a good practitioner, flexibility. So adjusting, you know, that I think it's good. And Darwin said that too, you know, not the fittest, not the strongest will survive, but the
One
most
who
flexible
can
one.
adapt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's be easygoing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Ciao, everyone. See you next year.
Ciao, ciao.